I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. Though no one join me, still I will follow. Though no one join me, still I will follow. Though no one join me, still I will follow. No turning back, no turning back. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. No turning back, no turning back. Amen. Amen. Thank you for that good singing there. Very short song. I thought it was appropriate. Good song. Brother Jeremiah Safford, sir, could you ask Lord to bless the service tonight especially, please, sir?
Universal decision that no matter what circumstances, situations, whether we just follow you, or one here tonight, different areas of children's ministry, or even here in our one that doesn't know you as their personal Savior. You take that lost soul that need for salvation. Yes. For many burdens, Lord, that we just cast upon you and trust you in each and every situation. Lord, that we just be accepting of your will. And that you be the pastor that we Lord the word, accept of it, and see how we ought to change and be more like your son. And Lord, everything that's said and done, honor and glory to your name, because your son name. Amen.
Amen. All right, you may be seated. 251. Sing all five. There is not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. That's page 251. We'll sing all five of those verses. And we sing out the first verse. There's no, not one. No, not one. Could heal all our souls' diseases. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a verse on that, and I was waiting on another verse. How many was that? 5? I was thinking there was on that. All right, let me get a couple of announcements out of the way. Let me tell you something. Our announcement sheet went real short all of a sudden. Okay, very, very short. And this coming Friday night, we had the Second Chance ministry over at Greenville Pekin Speedway, and that's been canceled because of the effect that the governor put on as far as 50 people in one place, and so that's been canceled. And with the fear and with the coronavirus and all going around, so that's been canceled. In March the 21st, we had the postponed the ladies' meeting until May the 2nd. So that's off, and then we're still working on a couple of things here. March the 29th, we're going to go down to the Victory Baptist Church, but Leroy called me yesterday, and because of all that's going on, he wants to move that up sometime in maybe April or May, and so we'll wait till then to do that, and I'm 100% behind that on what he's doing there. Right now, we're still, because everything's being canceled and everything's being delayed until the 25th, the end of the month, or whatever. So with the yard sale, right now, we're going to keep it open right now until we find out other things, and we can cancel that any moment. That's not a thing, but we'll plan on doing it for right now and see what happens. And so hopefully, by Easter Sunday, everything will be back to normal. We're hoping that will happen. We really are. So I got some of the little handouts down here if you want to hand them out, some of those little cards, and hand them out. Hopefully we can have a good crowd here. Hopefully the coronavirus has gone back to China by then, and we can maybe have a good crowd, and hopefully the Lord will bless and see what happens. Now, if you open your Bibles to the book of Titus real quick, the book of Titus, we're not going to be long tonight. I just need you to help me pray about some things, okay? And I'll get with the deacons and talk to them with the executive order that was made by the governor. And when I say this, I've called, I don't know how many churches, and you look around every church and every pastor you call, and this thing is all across the board. And here's the biggest thing about this. We are in uncharted waters. We have never gone through this. And so every pastor is up in airs about what he's going to do. And if you talk to some churches, have already said, we're just going to do live streaming Sunday. And some, one over in North Carolina, in Raleigh, North Carolina, Brother Rick Finley got a good-sized church over there, Christian school and all. And I was listening to him this week, and they're having a live stream, but they're having someone come in. Some of the musicians are coming, and they're going to have some special singing, and then live stream everything. And so I think, in fact, they did that last week over there because the governor had already declared that in North Carolina last week. And so they did it, and he said he had a lot of people in his church say that they really enjoyed the messages online and everything, but they missed the fellowship of the people in the church. So this is what they're doing this week. I'm just giving you what some people in churches are doing. And these are fundamental, independent, Bible-believing Baptist church, okay? These are all doing that. So what they're doing, he's asking the congregation, people in the church, if you live close to one another, get 10 or 15 people in your house, listen to it on live stream, and then you got fellowship with those 10 or 15 there. And so, that's what some of them are doing. So if you want to have that fellowship. And there's not a person in this church, okay? I will say this. There's not a person in his church more concerned about it than I am as far as the decisions we need to make on what we got to do at church. And there's not a person in his church that wants to be in church any more than I do. And there's not a person in his church that wants to protect their people any more than I do. And whatever decision we make between now and Sunday or Saturday, we'll make that decision. Whatever decision we make between now and then, in a perfect world, it'd be a great decision. But this is not a perfect world. And you'll have people who will disagree with it. You'll have people who don't like it. You'll have some say, well, I could have been there. Some say, I wish you hadn't had it. I'm not coming. We're not in a perfect world. And so any decision we make is not going to please everybody. But we do ask this, whatever decision we make, that you'll stand with us on it. If you agree with it or not. If you like it or not. We just hope you'll stand with us on those decisions, because I'll say this right here, no one, every church that I've talked to, I've talked to Brother Logan, I've talked to Scott Dean, I've talked to others, and I can just go down the list. Jeff Stewart, I've talked to Brother Bill Cole,
And not one church that I talked to is having Sunday school Sunday. Not one church is having Sunday school. A lot of people don't even want to shake hands. They don't want to be around people and all that, so they're not having Sunday school. One church, now here's what we got to look at too, okay? Now I'm going to give you some verses here, and I'm just telling you some scenarios we can look at that's going through my mind that I lay at the house and don't sleep because I'm worried about what we're going to do, what's going to happen, and all that. Here's the scenarios, all right? One church is doing it like this. They run about 400 or 500. And this was what he said yesterday morning. I talked to him yesterday morning, and I was at his church, and I talked to him, and I said, "What are you going to do Sunday?" He said, "Here's what we're doing." He said, "We're not going to have Sunday school, but we're going to have the Sunday school hour, and we got our staff's calling members and saying, you be here at 10 o'clock, and we're going to get rid of them. We're going to bring another 100 in at 11 o'clock, and then we're going to have 2 services on Sunday night and bring another 100 in and another 100 in." That's how they're doing it, okay? So that was yesterday. I texted him today. I said, but Governor McMaster said 50 people and not 100 anymore. Sunday, he said 100. Y'all remember that? If you looked at it, he said 100 people. Yesterday, his executive order said 50. So I said, what's your plan now? I texted him today, and I said, what's your plan now? He called me right after. He said, Brother Dan, he said, this is what I'm doing. And he said, we're talking right now, and we're trying to get in touch with the Attorney General of South Carolina to find out what we can do as a church, because we want to comply. Because this same pastor, I'll tell you who it is, Brother Joel Logan over here at Tabernacle, he said we want to comply to what the government's asking us to do because we want to help in the situation. He said if we have church and just have all 400 people in here, and he said unbelievers run up and down the road and they're going to see us congregated. Oh, you don't care about us? You don't care about your congregation? You don't care about people? So you see, we're all over the board on it. We're in uncharted waters. And we don't care as far as that goes. I'm not concerned about what a lost person says about our church. But at the same time, you want to try to win lost people. So we are in uncharted waters right here on all this. And Brother Logan said, I want to do it this way. So I want to comply with what the state said. They said 100. Now, today or yesterday, Governor McMaster came and said 50. Now, here's the difference what he said Sunday and what he said yesterday. Here's the difference. If you listen to it, and this is what they're asking the Attorney General, and I said, well, as soon as you find out, you let me know, because I want to know, too, what the Attorney General said, what we can do as a church. Sunday, he said the executive order reached to public and private meetings. Yesterday, he said government and public meetings. It didn't include private. You see what I'm saying? So that's what they're trying to find out. Did he include just the churches? Okay, but when you look at our church, even though it's a private place, it's a public opening, right, for public people to come in. And so that's what they're trying to determine on what they're going to do Sunday, according to that. So I'm just telling you, everything, we're all over the place doing whatever. And I've looked and I've talked and I've called. I've had some call me, hey, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. and we don't know. We're in uncharted waters right here. And it's something, it's easy. If it was a snow day, we'd just say, hey, we're going to have service calls. You can't get up the hill. That would be fine. You can't do that. And then if you had, let's say, 50 in service, and they say you can only have 50, well, what 50 is coming? What 50 is not going to come? So you got to have a lot of wisdom in this, and that's what we asking you as a member, that you would pray that God give us wisdom on what we should do. Now, I would ask very upfront, if you are fearful and if you are concerned about health, and if you are an elderly person that has health issues, I would stay home for sure. I mean, that's the first thing I'd do is stay home. I'm not that concerned about it, but I'll probably be the first one to get it. I'm not that concerned about it because I feel like I'm in pretty good health and I can fight it off or whatever, but I'll probably be the first one to get it. And so there's just a lot of decisions we need to make about Sunday. And again, I'll be getting with the deacons and we'll just see what we can do. And if we come together, like Brother Logan said, if he comes together, Paul Chapel, Jack Trieber, all the big churches out west in California, it's all live streaming. Most of these big churches just live streaming for the next 2 weeks. They're just doing live streaming. That's all they're doing. And so one person said it like this. So here's another, because when we come down to Baptist, where's your Southern Baptist, Independent Baptist? It doesn't matter because each church is still independently operated. Even though you're Southern Baptist or Independent Baptist, you got Southern Baptists. They may be a member of the Southern Baptist Association, but they don't tell them what to do and when they can do it and how they can do it. Most of the time, they're independent. They vote on themselves who the pastor is, who's going to be deacons and things like that. But when you come down to it, each one of them's got to make their own decision. And I think Rock Springs over here, they've already made their decision. They're just live streaming for the next 2 weeks. Is what they're doing at Rock Springs now. And then one preacher said it like this: well, live streaming, and this is what he said. And you have to look at each thing that they're saying. And he said this. He said, well, live streaming, it's not just about you preaching. Church ministry is just about you preaching. It's about meeting the needs of people. So, one's going to criticize if you just live stream and said you should, it's not about just your message going out to the people online or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And you can watch plenty of televangelists if you want to. If you stayed at home on Sunday, you can watch, you can go across the board and watch any one of you want to, do whatever. But regardless, we're going to find out 50 or 100. That's what we're going to try to find out. But I would like to have this, if we do this. I'd have to have Philip and Conway here to do live streaming. I would like to have somebody here singing at least, have a couple of songs. And I'd like to have some people in the congregation, if we could, at least 50. That's just my thought right now. If we had that, just, a couple of people singing some specials, and then we'd preach online to those who want to stay at home. So what I'm going to look at in the Bible here tonight, well, let's look at a couple of verses here in Titus chapter number 3. And I've tried to go through and try to find some things that what it is and what we should do and how we... Now, can I say what the government is doing right now? Let me go back and say this. President Trump mentioned the other day that the CDC is recommending 10 people, okay? That is not an executive order. That was just a recommendation of 10 people or more, no more than 10 people congregated. That's not an executive order, what he said. Governor McMaster said 100 on Sunday. And then yesterday again he said 50. So we're all over the board on that right now. What do we do? Which way do we go? And neither one of those, President Trump nor Governor McMaster nor any other governor, has said anything about us as a church not congregating together. They haven't said that as far as what the limit number they are saying. They're not trying to close our church down. Okay, I want you to realize that. This has nothing to do, well, we ought to obey God, not man. Okay, this has nothing to do with that. It's not them trying to shut us up. It's not them trying to stop us. I mean, they're closing down schools. They're closing down sporting events. They're closing. I mean, the Haywood Mall closed today. They're not opening up to the end of April. Belks and other stores, they're all closing down. Now, this is my opinion, okay? I'm going to throw you my opinion out there right now. How many people remember September 11, 2001? You remember that day? And our country has been forever changed since that day. Since 2001, they said then they didn't take our freedom. All you have to do is get on an airplane. You'll see how much freedom you don't have. When you go through all the security and TSA and all that, you'll find out how much freedom they took away from us when they hit the World Trade Centers. You'll find out what they did. Now, this is just my personal opinion, okay? I may be wrong. But I feel like after this episode, we'll never be the same again on this one. Every time a little pandemic comes up, it's going to happen again and again and again. I just feel like that's what, just like it did on 2000 or 2001, September 11th. After this and how everybody's reacting to this, it's going to happen again and again. Our country will never be the same. The world will never be the same because of this. Does anybody know the difference between a pandemic and an epidemic? You know the difference? I was going to Georgia yesterday with Dr. Scott Dean. I was taking him and his wife. Me and my wife took him and his wife down to Macedonia to meet the mission board and to meet Scott Collin, the director, and all that, and let them see how our mission board operates. And we was going down the road. Brother Scott Dean was driving, and I was in the front with him. He said, Brother Moore, he said, what's a pandemic and what's an epidemic? I said, well, I don't know. I said, let's look it up right quick. So you know what you do? You Google things nowadays, don't you? A pandemic is this right here. A new disease that could cause a lot of issues that can turn into an epidemic. That's the difference between a pandemic and an epidemic. And so what we're doing and what our country and what the world is trying to do right now is to stop the pandemic from becoming an epidemic. Y'all understand that? And I want you to keep that in your mind now. That's what they're trying to do. They're not trying to take away our religious freedoms. They're not trying to take away our freedom of speech. They're not trying to do that. Now, a lot of people, if you're independent, hellfire, brimstone, that's what you're going to say. They're trying to take away our freedom, and we're meeting. Let me just give you one example. Janice and I was eating in a restaurant. All the restaurants are closed down too, right? And so we said, we got to go out one more time on Tuesday. So where can we go? We chose Gus's. Of all the steakhouses we could have gone to, we chose Gus's. And we went up here to Gus's, street side. And but there's a restaurant, and they've asked all the bars and all the restaurants and all that to be closed. No inside service, only drive-through or carry out. Y'all with me? Y'all seen that, right? Well, you got one guy, they showed it on the news just a little while ago, and he up in Ohio, he said, I'm going to open up and I'm going to do what I want to do. That's my right. That's my company. It's my firm. It's my restaurant. They went and locked him up. They arrested him. They padlocked his place and barricaded it. Janice and I was sitting at the Gus's last night, and you know how you got some people in there that's know-alls, and he has to be louder than anybody in the restaurant. I wanted to go over there and do whatever. Jap slap him about 40 times. And he said, now he called it Chick-fil-A chick, but it's chicken salad chick, Ebenezer. Y'all know which one I'm talking about? Only chicks go there, okay? Men don't go there. Mason, you already been? Okay, just want to make sure. I just saw Donna laughing back there. I'm just kidding, My wife, she loves it. I'm not a chicken salad person, so she can go there by herself anytime she wants to. I don't go there. But the name keeps the man away. Chicken salad chick. No, that's just a chick place, So this man over here at Gus's, yes, they did. And he said, well, the manager over there said he's going to open up. He's going, well, they'll lock him up too. You see, this is an executive order to not open up restaurants. They haven't put that on us as a church, okay? I want y'all to remember that. They have not done that. But I do believe if our president, who I think has been the greatest friend to the evangelical church since he has been in office, to Israel since he has been in office, if he puts out some kind of executive order, I believe we should try to help him make that come to pass. I heard a reporter today say this. Said President Trump in his press conference is acting like a person who's going to win this battle. He said all the media is acting like we're failures and we're not going to make it. He said, but President Trump is acting like he's going to win this battle. And I heard him say that today. We're going to beat it, and we're going to beat it big. We're going to win. That's what you got to have. And I think that if we, like him, and enjoy what he's doing to our country and how he's helping the church and standing up for our rights, I believe we should try to stand behind him on some things too and try to help him win this thing. Okay, are y'all with me? Okay, we got to make a decision. That's this final word. We got to make a decision here in Titus chapter 3, verse number 1. It says, put them in mind to be subject, I want you to remember that word, to principalities and powers, to obey magistrates, to be ready to every good work. Okay? Now I'm just going to use that as my jump board. Now look at that word subject, to be subject to them. We're subjected. That means to submit one's control, to yield to one's advice and that admonition that they're given. The CDC and all the medical professionals, they're admonishing us to try to limit public activity. That's what they're trying to do. So that's what that verse is talking about, principalities. And that word principalities is talking about things that have been firstly spoken. And you look at the word powers, it means the power of rule of government. So the rule of government has spoken first to tell us and to admonish us that we should do certain things. Okay, that's what we're looking at. Now, when I look at this right here, he said to obey magistrates. It means to obey one in authority, and it also means to hearken. To hearken. How many times have you told your children, don't do this? How many times have you told your children, don't touch that? And they touched it, and they didn't obey that magistrate, that order that you've given them. They didn't obey it, and they got burned on the burner. Okay? Or they got cut by a piece of glass. Or something's happened. So we have to do that. So to obey magistrate is to obey the one in authority. It means to hearken, to listen. And so they have spoken, they have said some things. Now, it doesn't stop there. Look in Acts chapter 27, if you would. Acts chapter number 27. Acts chapter number 27. And I'm going to look at what Paul said. You know, when he was sailing to Rome and they went shipwreck. You remember that story? And in Acts chapter number 27, they're in a storm and they go shipwreck and they wind up on the island of Melita. And there they are. And you know what Paul said in verse number 21? 27, 21. But after long abstinence, Paul said, he didn't even come around them for a while. He said, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, you should have hearkened unto me. That's that same word over there in Titus. You should have hearkened unto me. That's the same word translated. He said, you should have hearkened unto me and not have loosed from Crete and to have gained this harm and loss. So, this is what every preacher said. I heard Brother Scott Dean today, listen to him on the radio and on TBI this morning. And I haven't listened to him a long time on there, and I just listened to him this morning. And this is what his prayer was. He said, Lord, help us to have wisdom in our churches on Sunday. He said, I would hate to be the one that has services and somebody contacted the virus because of me having services. You see what I'm saying? He's concerned. Every preacher's concerned. I'm going to say this again. There's not a person here more concerned about it than I am. There's not a person here that has thought about it, prayed about it more than I have. I'm telling you, and if your pastor loves his people, there's not a person in church that thinks about it more than he does. Because he has to sit back and he's going to be the one who says, all right, we're going to have to do this or this or this. And all that falls on him. That's what it does. It falls on him whenever we do something like that. Now, whenever I see this, let's look in Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. Now, that's what Paul said there to the people whenever they were taking him to Rome. And they wound up in the shipwreck. And he said, you shouldn't have left the port that I told you about. Because he said, I didn't feel good about it. But in Acts chapter 5, now this is a different story. Okay, this is a different story. This is when Paul and them were preaching, and they locked them up. And they took them in, and they beat them, and they said, don't you speak again in the name of Jesus Christ. This is not what's happening today. This is not what's happening today. But in Acts chapter 5, verse number 29, look what Paul said. Then Peter, and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than man. That has nothing to do in the order we're seeing today. They're not telling us to keep quiet. In fact, I would say that the president and I would say that our governor would say, we want y'all to pray. We want y'all to help us pray that God would give us wisdom in our medical field to give them wisdom on a cure for this virus that's going around today. So that's a difference in Acts chapter 5 and Acts chapter 27, okay? And then in Titus, they're not telling us, they're not trying to shut the door of the church. They're not doing that. Because when it comes down to it, they shut off all the other sports activities. Now here's going to be another problem. I don't think we should cancel church during this time. It's just right now. This is what I'm thinking right now. I don't think we should cancel church during this time right now. Because, they still have BMW operating. They still have Michelin operating. They still have Milliken operating. And you know what? They got 3,000 or 4,000 people rubbing shoulders against each other every day. But now here's the government's dilemma. Here's those people's dilemma. Let me say this. If it comes to the point of closing down our manufacturing, we're in serious trouble. It's going to be another ball game. And so they haven't done that yet. Because we know that we've got to have that to make it and to live. Hey, let me tell you this. If they close down the manufacturing, you will not find toilet paper. You will not find. If they close down your manufacturing, no, you will not find toilet paper anywhere. How many people found toilet paper today? Anybody found any? I wasn't looking either, but I found some here at church. I was down at the mission office yesterday, and we drove down an hour and a half to get there, and I went to the restroom. When I got in there, I saw about 4 or 5 stacks of rolled paper. I said, pack the car up, honey. We'll get some toilet paper and take it home with us. And I was just joking around with them in the mission office. But they can't find it down there either. But, you see where the government is right now, too? They're in just as big a predicament as we are. Now, and I did see on the news today where BMW, they did say that they're going to continue operating until further notice. They may close the doors there. That's what they're talking about. I don't know if they have or not, since I heard it this afternoon about 5:30 on the news. And so there we are. Now, that's why we need people to pray. Now, let's go to Romans chapter number 13, if you would. Romans chapter number 13. I believe that God establishes our government, don't you? I believe He gives us the laws. I believe He gives us the civil laws. And I believe He gives us the religious laws and all that to help us. And in Romans chapter number 13, I believe God tells us that He's established these laws and these governments and everything. He established them. He takes them down. In Romans chapter 13, verse number 1, let every soul be subject to the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God, the governments and all that we see. Now look what it says for. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. That's very plain, isn't it? That's very plain. I don't think that needs to be expounded upon. Whosoever therefore resisted the power, resisted the ordinance of God. So in other words, if you break the law, you're going to get in trouble, right? I mean, that's what the law is here for. If they put the law out there and you break it, you get in trouble. You go to jail. You go to prison. You get to spend some time. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. He said in verse number 3, for rulers are not a terror to the good works, but to the evil. Now, I know we got some wicked people in government. Let me say that. I know we've got that. But I do believe that the power we have, we got some people in Washington. They were just up there. I talked to Brother David Shoemaker, who is having this Second Chance ministry over here at Fairgrounds. He's pastors over in Taylor's. And I was talking to him the other day on the phone. And he was in Washington with the senators and all that. That day, they're having a meeting up there with them. And he told me, he said, Brother Danny, he said, I wish you could have been here. He said, man, he said, there's a guy telling us, he says there's probably 1,000 people in Washington, in the government, in facilities and all that up there. He said there are strong Christians. They were in our meetings. And he said, they said, if we can pray and if we'll do what God wants to do, we can change this country. But it's going to depend on us. So there are some good, even though there's some bad up there. I think the majority are trying to help us out. You got those liberal Democrats and all that they're evil. He said, for rulers are not a terror to the good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he, listen to what it said, our rulers, our government, is a minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon them that doeth evil. Wherefore you must needs be subject not only for wrath, but for also, listen, conscience sake. Conscience sake. Now, any good preacher is not going to just have a meeting if he's got a good conscience. He won't be able to sleep if he causes somebody to get hurt. I'm telling you. You know, when it snows, if I have somebody have a wreck come to church, because we had services, and I'm saying, no, bless God, we're going to have church. And somebody has a wreck and gets killed, that'd kill me. Conscience. He said, for conscience sake, okay? He said, for this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continue upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. So I think Paul lays it out pretty good there, doesn't he, about our government and about them mandating some things. Again, I want you to remember this. They're not telling us to shut our doors. They're not telling us to shut our mouth. They're telling us to be cautious, to be very cautious. Then look in 1 Peter chapter 2, if you would. 1 Peter chapter 2. Now, these are just some verses, and I'm going to say this. Boy, I've been praying. I've been looking at them, and I've been trying to consider, and I've been calling around. I've been looking around, and I've been trying to find out, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And again, we could have 100 people here in this church, and I'll guarantee if I were to ask you right now to write down on a piece of paper of the 25 or so people in here, I'd get 25 different answers of what we should do Sunday. Okay, I'd get 25 different answers what we should do Sunday. So we're going to pray about it, and we're going to see what God would have us to do, and not what I want to do, and not what you want to do, but what does God want us to do. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse number 13. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors as unto them that are sent by him, for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. You see that? You got both sides there, don't you? He said, for so is the will of God, that with well-doing you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. Very simple. So there we are. There we are. That's what we have tonight. That's where we are. And I'm glad you came tonight. I wish some more people would have come. And I'm hoping some in our church are listening by way of internet tonight, by Facebook Live. Are y'all going to have YouTube up and going too? You got YouTube going right now, and you also have Facebook Live going. You got both. And see, those young men are doing a fine job, aren't they? They are. They're doing a fine job up there with what little bit of equipment we got for them. And so so it's working good on YouTube right now. Did y'all say y'all wanted to raise? You're high enough already. You're up in the balcony. You're up there in the balcony. So there we are. Could I ask you to do me a favor? Help me pray. Help us pray. And by Saturday, we'll let you know something, if not before. We'll let everybody know what we're going to do Sunday. But if I could say right now, as far as I know right now, there'll be no Sunday school hour Sunday, as far as I know right now. And we'll just come in for a Sunday morning service, and hopefully, because we're going to find out if it's okay to have 50 or 100. And that's what we're going to try to do. And I would like to have some volunteers to come to church. And I'd like to have some volunteers stay home and watch it on YouTube. Y'all two boys going to be here? Y'all going to be here Sunday? So if you don't listen to it well, it'll be their fault, not mine. And we'll do something like that. Because here's the thing. In a situation like this, if we just close the doors up Sunday, don't you listen to me, if we just close the doors up Sunday, there could be a lost person during this situation. We've got to take advantage of this situation also. It could be a lost person come in and get saved by the grace of God. I mean, it really could happen. Whenever things like this happen, the people are very sensitive. And we could have a lost person Sunday say, well, look, I don't want to catch this disease, and I don't want to die. And I want to go to church and all that. And it can happen. And that's why I don't want to close the doors. I do not want to close the doors. But we are going to do something Sunday. I just don't know what, and I hope you'd help me pray. And if if they say 50, if we just got 20 people here, 10, or just a musician, I do know this, the guy, I told you we're going to have 2 missionaries Sunday from the Philippines. And Brother Teddy Fuffer was down here in our building Monday, Tuesday, and today. And with all that's going on, he has a son that lives in Pensacola. And so he just told me today, he said, Brother Dan, he said, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and head down that way. And I'll just be with my son down there. And he said, I'll just come back to your missions conference in September. I said, okay, that'd be fine. So he's already gone. But the other guy, the service he's going to be in tonight is canceled already. And so he didn't have anywhere to go tonight. He's over in North Carolina, but he does have a place to stay over that way. He's going to be coming in Saturday probably. And if nothing else, I understand he plays the piano. And he sings, because Brother Mike Petrocco out in South Dakota said he can sing good, play the piano well. So, we'll have a piano player regardless if Nathan M. or whoever don't want to come that morning, whatever. He could come here and play. We'll let him sing about 4 songs, and I can preach. Just be me and him. You know what I'm saying? And y'all can listen on live. And then I got to know that I can't have at least more than 50 people here. But I'd like for you to come if you could, And if nothing else, we can pray. Nothing else, we can pray. And I want to ask Nathan if he would to come to the piano. And that's what we're going to do. We don't have a prayer list tonight. You know why? I don't think more important right now anything than what we're going through right now in church. In our nation right now, we just need to pray about this. If you'll bow right there where you are, if you want to come down to the altar, we're going to close with an altar prayer tonight. And you just help us pray. God, if any man lack wisdom, ask of God, who giveth and upbraideth not, liberally and upbraideth not, as Nathan plays.